I think everybody knows who I am. Yeah, I'm Slater, one of the TOFS trustees, and I do run the TOFS Medical Liaison Research Committee. I just want to take a minute out because this week I thought of something which I haven't thought of before, which is a bit of an interesting coincidence. About 70 years ago, not about 70 years ago, exactly 70 years ago, in November of 1953, and some of our people in the room will know this, because members of the Association of Paediatric Surgeons. Like that, who's here, he's a member of that. Yeah, of course. Patches. The committee. And that became effectively the point of that association, the first paediatric surgery medical society in the world. And they had the kind of foundation meeting here under the chairmanship, or what became the chairmanship of a gentleman called Dennis Brown, who is a surgeon here. I think anybody who is a VAPS knows who Dennis Brown is, because I think there's an annual award or some sort, isn't there, named after him. So that was in the middle of November, as far as I understand it, 1953. One of the people around the table, one of the founders, was a surgeon from Manchester called Ambrose Jollies. Now, he was quite interested in esophageal atresia. He was also interested in cleft palate. Those are his two specialisms. And unlike probably, particularly in the southeast, in the north of England, esophageal atresia was not particularly, until that point, had been a successful surgery. Down here, it was a little bit different, probably some other parts of the country. And in fact, the second oldest survivor of esophageal atresia in Europe is with us today, Bridget. Hi, Bridget. And there were others here, Great on the Street, by then had quite a number of successes, not so much in the north of England. 2 weeks later, after that meeting, Ambrose Jollies received, about the 30th of November, he received into his care a 3-year-old esophageal atresia patient. That was me. And I was the first success in the north of England. And so as I get older, I become more aware of how lucky I am. So when I say it's a privilege to be with you here today, it really is a privilege to be here today. Be very, very fortunate. And it just, as I say, occurred to me that we have this remarkable coincidence. 70 years old of being here with this seminar today. It's almost exactly 70 years since BAPS effectively had its founding meeting. So quite an interesting little coincidence. I thought, anyway, enough. Let's move on. So I'm just going to try and put what we do with the whole research thing into some kind of context. We have, in TOFS, we have a 3-pronged strategy. This is quite boring stuff really, but I need to put it into context. We have a responsibility to keep the organisation going, to be sustainable, to be financially sensible and all those kinds of things, to govern the organisation properly. We look to provide near-term benefits, and those are the things that we do by webinars, by providing information, by looking after the Facebook group, by providing pastoral support and so on. But we also look for medium and long-term benefits, and that comes through the work that we do in collaboration with colleagues from medicine and research. And they are medium and long-term benefits. It's not just necessarily long-term benefit, but there are medium-term benefits as we move towards trying to improve care pathways, guidelines, providing information. You'll hear all sorts of things today that fall into those kind of categories. And the scope of what we do, again, you'll hear today in all of these areas. I'm going to move on quickly because we're in danger of kind of running over time here. And outside, you'll see a couple of posters with these spiders' web diagrams on them of all of the kind of things that TOFS is engaged in, be it collaboratively, be it by providing participation, by surveying our members, and so on and so forth. You'll hear all of these different things today. And there's another one there for the work that we do internationally in support of our esophageal atresia patient federation, which is EAT, Esophageal Atresia Global Support Group. And you'll hear a little bit more about that from me this afternoon. We also manage what we do with some help from our medical liaison subcommittee, our internal subcommittee, which we meet every now and then, for quite frequently actually. Those are the members of it, won't go through them, most of them are here I think. And we also have a couple of subgroups from our medical advisory group. They're very particular to us. We have an international engagement one that's kind of run by Nick Lansdale, who unfortunately is not here today. Paolo is a member of that group. And we also have our research subgroup, which is led by Nigel and myself. More importantly, just try and get some of these key messages over before we move on. And really, this is kind of some important things I just wanted to say. I mean, first of all, you can see there's that broad scope of activity. There is cutover, and you'll hear about that between some of the stuff that's on that UK spider's web and on the international spider's web. One of our roles we've increasingly found is that we bring clinicians and researchers together. As a patient organisation that's both in the UK and internationally with EAT, we sometimes become aware, because we're approached by different researchers, different clinicians on certain projects to get engaged. And we find that there's a kind of carryover with something else that might be going on somewhere else. So sometimes we actually do provide the glue, yeah? It's important to say that we've got shared goals. And of course, the shared goals are that we want to improve outcomes. It's also fair to say that that doesn't mean we all agree. Of course, we don't always agree, and in fact, clinicians and researchers don't always agree amongst themselves. I've witnessed some quite interesting, debates at some medical conferences, and particularly in the surgical technique area. And one or two of you here, sorry for the name dropping here, but if I said Steve Rothenberg against the rest of the world, I think no one would know what I'm talking about. And no power. We do like to be proactive when we can, and a couple of years ago we did produce a position paper that's summarised on one of the posters. Idealistic maybe, some people say, unrealistic other people say, but the challenge for us is to make what today might be unrealistic realistic in terms of improved care. So, hot topics. Respiratory morbidity is a hot topic. That's something that we will see, I think, more of. And again, you'll hear where and how this afternoon we might try and address that. Transition in adult care is a big topic. And apologies for those who've heard me crack this one-liner before, but when you get to my age, you can't become even more interested in the transition from adult to geriatric care. And the other one that's really important, Volko's here to present today, the psychological impact, quality of life is a really, really big topic. And I'm reminded, I think I might have just gone past a slide here somewhere, unless it's gone. Excuse me. Yeah, that's the slide I wanted. Over the years, we've moved through from merely endorsing research activity to being much more participatory. And as we've gone through, we've become increasingly engaged collaboratively, even to the point where the terminology co-building is used, i.e. we are working collaboratively with clinicians and researchers in developing new care pathways or guidelines or whatever. And that's particularly true in the international environment, again, which you'll hear more of this afternoon from myself and from Simon. The important thing there is we bring the patient perspective. This is an important aspect. We bring the patient perspective. And just one very quick story. When I first got involved with TOFS, and particularly internationally, we very quickly got involved in 2010, I think around about then, was the first ever international esophageal atresia conference, which was run by an organisation called EURORDIS, and I won't explain what that is now because you'll hear this afternoon. We were in Lille for that first meeting. I thought one person here was there, Di was there with me. We gave a presentation, we being myself and a few people from some other countries around the world who had patient organisations like TOFS, and we were very welcome there. But questions seemed to arise after I'd given my presentation as to, okay, you're very welcome, but what actually is the relevance of patient organisations? The fascinating thing was that before I was able to kind of answer the question and say, you know, we want to work with you, etc., 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 a gentleman stood up from the audience, who I don't think many of the lead clinicians who were running this first ever international congress knew, and he's an eminent, although retired by then, surgeon, and he stood up and he said, I've been hearing about the demise of patient organisations for at least 20 years. So, I mean, that's between 1990 and 2010. And he said, I don't see it happening anytime soon. And the person who stood up, anybody want to know who that might have been? Anybody like to guess? Anybody who works here like to guess? Let's ask Natalie Durkin. Natalie, who might it be?
Either Professor Spitz.
Yes, that's why I asked you. Yes, Professor Lewis Spitz, who actually was one of the first medical patrons of TOFS. Some of you will know him. Who knows, Christine and Tom, Sue, know from the past. And I was very grateful for that. But I think it shows you he was so supportive of us. He was supportive also of our sister organisation in Germany. And I was reminded that I didn't have that slide. I flicked past it. I'll pass it again now. Because he also inspired one comment to do with this whole quality of life heap, which is on this bottom hot topic. My colleague in Germany, Anke Wiedemann, who's now the president of HEAP, uses an expression which was inspired by something which Professor Spitz said, which was, we have to remember there's a child around the esophagus and there's a family around the child. And that is a very, very important thing for us all to kind of bear in mind. And I think it's at the back of everything or behind everything that we try to do in the whole world of psychological impact, quality of life, and the impact on families and so on. Okay, just final 2 points. The things that get done in the area of research and development don't necessarily get implemented all that quickly. So sometimes things are slower than we'd like them to be, but we have to recognise and live in the real world. And then the final one I want to make, this is perhaps the most important thing. We aren't medical experts, but we are experts by experience. We know what it's like to either live with the condition or be looking after a child that's living with the condition. Never let anybody say you're not an expert. And it's that expertise through that patient perspective that I mentioned that we try to bring to much of the work that we do with researchers and clinicians. That's a really important message. And then finally, why do we do this? Well, it's about improved care, less morbidity, and of course, improved outcomes. And we do it for you. And only I could possibly have contrived to get a song title from my favourite composers, Lennon and McCartney, from 1964, a song called It's For You. And that is what we actually do. And there's a